Good morning and assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope you're all well today. And picking up from last week, uh, over the next over the next few weeks, we'll discuss we'll discuss each component that makes up the greater constellation, which is the built environment in which um, with which we are surrounded. So first, uh, first order of business, please scan the QR code or punch in the attendance or punch in the student attendance code number, whatever code number, whatever you want to call it, and to mark your attendance today. The QR code will be available for scanning and at the end of the session. Again, for those of you who have might have trouble marking your attendance for the first time. Otherwise, just let me know, and I will check your attendance from the log in classroom. So we'll talk about products today, and I'll just give you a brief reminder of what the built environment really is. It is everything that is humanly made. It is everything that we make, we arrange, and we maintain to fulfill and it's there. The built environment is there to help us fulfill our needs, purposes, and maybe even reflect our values. The built environment can be a modifier of the overall environment, and one thing that we should notice is that the results or the or whatever it is that we do has an impact both negative and positive to the environmental context surrounding us. Again, just as a reminder, there are several components. We are going to start with the most basic building block or basic component within the that make up the whole built environment. I showed you this diagram last week. I'm sure you remember. I'll keep showing this diagram subsequently in the following weeks. So let's just get it on. Products, or to be specific, industrial and product design. Now, you might be thinking, why would products, small scale products such as mobile phones or even books or glasses, earphones, computers, and other machineries, what do they have to do with planning or the built environment? I thought we're here to learn to become planners. Well, the idea of me introducing each component of the built environment is to provide an illustration or context on how each of those components interact and how each of those components impact our lives, impact the greater society, and impact the environment. So products are the first and the most basic building blocks of the built environment. And the thing is that we're surrounded by it. So products are so numerous, and it's become a part of our everyday lives that we become desensitized. and we become desensitized by it. And since we are desensitized by it, oftentimes the products that we use are overlooked and even taken for granted. Yet they're, however, they are of fundamental importance to everyone, to you, to me, to everyone. Now, in the most basic sense, the ability to create products distinguishes humans from other species of the animal kingdom. We're all mammals, some scientists can argue, but what distinguishes us from other mammals is that we can create these. We have the capacity to create these things. And products enable us to pursue many diverse activities and support human endeavors, both noble and ignoble, or both good and bad. Um, so products such as tools, machineries, and the like, they extend our capacities. But not only do they extend our capacities, but they also extend our responsibilities. For example, if you take a stone, a rock, an axe, or a spear, if someone takes a stone, an axe, or a spear, then that person may have dominance over a few because they are armed. But imagine a red button. Imagine a red button that is connected to a nuclear arsenal that would provide you the capacity to control or destroy the world. A little red button that is connected to some other things. Now, this illustration therefore creates huge responsibilities. Consequently, when dealing with products, it is important to connect human intellectual capacities to create with human and environmental responsibilities. Now, the simplest product, a soda can, maybe, or a water bottle, like the ones that we buy in convenience stores. Now, such products can be produced many, 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 many times and collectively consume large amount of resources. You may think, "Oh, this is an insignificant bottle. It's an insignificant plastic bottle." However, we need to realize that the plastic bottle that we buy from a convenience store that happens to contain the beverage of choice has been mass produced in the millions, if not billions. And the production of these insignificant products, they consume large amounts of resources, causing considerable human environmental impacts if they're not reused or recycled. Even if they are reused and or recycled, they still have a degree of impact. Now, as we move along through the course today, you may find it enjoyable and perhaps even challenging to observe and um, analyze the products that surround you at the moment, and think about how they help you perform your daily activities, or how they help you um, get through life or perform the activities of life. And what's interesting to note, and I'll bring this up. I'll bring this up a couple of times as we move along. That many products are actually made from multiple materials that are products themselves or other subcomponents. Now, there's it's nice to think that there is a purpose and meaning to every product that we use, that we own. Books, for example, books, they convey an author or the author's ideas and concerns through humanly created letters, and these letters are arranged to form words, and the words form sentences, the sentences form paragraphs, and the paragraphs form chapters. The created languages of civilization. Books. Spectacles or glasses, whatever you may want to call them, they extend the human capacity to see, or they help us see for those of us who need spectacles. While the same type of product, lenses, like microscopes and telescopes, allow us to study the worlds that are smaller or significantly larger in scale than our normal vision can perceive. Our clothing keeps us comfortable and warm. It helps the colors that we choose in our clothing maybe even help convey moods. If you're happy, you wear black. If you're sad, you wear black. If you're indifferent, you wear gray, for example. And sometimes our clothing help us express our both formal and our informal values. If you work if you work in a bank or other financial institutions, they may ask you to wear a uniform, and that uniform and the uniform that you wear expresses the corporation's or the company's values, or the company's symbol or whatnot. Some clothing articles may even reflect religious values, and so on. So purpose and meaning. Machines, appliances, they help people cook, wash clothes, create, and machines and appliances envelope human life with music and electronic communication from distant places. I'm here at the moment, somewhere in the city, in my house. You're in another part of the city, and yet here we are virtually together. Walls, the walls that surround us, the walls that have been erected in our home, they're made of a variety of products that help mediate the external climate. They're designed to define quality spaces for almost all life activities. Some four walls or some walls make up or define your living quarters. Some walls define guest rooms. Some walls define dining rooms, the kitchen, and whatnot. Our phones connect us to our friends and family. They may help us. They may help us in an emergency. If there's fire, if there's a crime, you call authorities. You may even use it to call healthcare professionals. You use it to call your associates. And nowadays, phones are basically handheld computers. And computers, once upon a time, computers were the size of living rooms. Now they're pocket size and allow us to explore the World Wide Web, communicate with others, and save huge amounts of information. But nowadays, most of us store and work with our documents in the clouds. I think, and but just imagine if you have all your life's work inside one little device, and then all of a sudden it breaks. There goes all your life. So huge amounts of information. They carry out extensive work and even enjoy the occasional electronic games. The humanly made object. Well, humans or human beings can't really survive in isolation. In order to live, they need air, water, food, light, and are therefore dependent on their surroundings. We can't live in isolation. We need sustenance. We need sustenance such as air, water, food, and so on. Even light. Sunlight is good for us. Helps us synthesize certain nutrients in our body. Vitamin D, if I'm not mistaken, that helps us, and that helps us live a better life, a healthier life. And so we are just a part of a much larger whole. We are not alone. We are insignificant. We are just specks of dust in this cosmic world. Beyond the bare necessities, the human race impulsively modifies the environment to create objects to provide shelter and protection. Now, speaking of impulses, people from prehistoric times to the present have deliberately shaped utensils, tools, clothes, weapons, and even created rituals or decorative artifacts as an extension of themselves. For example, as I mentioned, the clothes are created to improve thermal protection. Tools and weapons are developed to extend the use of our hands to perform tasks beyond their original capabilities. Our hands can only do so much, but if we need to split wood, unless you're a lifelong trained martial artist, then you might need an axe to split a wood. And these objects are found in a variety of forms in different parts of the world. Objects made from objects made for the same use may vary considerably in different places according to local materials and traditions and to different levels of ingenuity and skill. So I mentioned an axe earlier. It's a very familiar object. I think another familiar object would be a hammer, axe. Um, it, Hammers and axes are familiar objects a with a known purpose, like a fork, a cup, or bowl. This familiarity is visible in the external shape of the object. It communicates its purpose without words, creating a sort of visual language. If you see an axe or see an object that is shaped like an axe, you most of the times you would immediately know what it's for. It's for splitting wood. It's for chopping down trees and other cutting and hacking functions. If you see a bowl, you know what it's for. It's a container for. It's a water container. It helps us. A bowl is to help us eat soup, for example. That's what I meant with visual language. And certain objects communicate what they are by the familiarity of what they do, their function. Now we observe them performing their function, and therefore we know what they are. Others communicate through their appearance, their form. We recognize their form and we know their function. A bowl, a water container, a mug for coffee and such. Some objects don't really possess a practical function, but they have qualities that are purely aesthetic or symbolic. Tattoos, for example, they serve no they serve no practical function whatsoever. What are tattoos for? But they have no practical function, but they do have aesthetic qualities or even symbolic qualities. They're tribal tattoos, they're modern tattoos. They were made to be looked at. You look at them and you maybe enjoy them. A painting is another example. I don't know why I picked tattoos. I should have just put a picture of a painting there. They're made to be looked at and enjoyed or to convey ideas and meanings. Their significance or even beauty, if you can call it so, may not be immediately understood by the observer, especially the uninitiated observer. The growth of an aesthetic sense or the comprehension of complex symbolism may sometimes require a process of learning. If you look at if you look at a very famous painting, I don't know, the Mona Lisa or a painting by Van Gogh. For those of you who are not well versed in visual arts, you may think they're just, oh, it's just a picture of a lake, it's just a picture of a woman, or a Van Gogh painting. You might look at it and think blotches of ink or blotches of paint. But to those who are very well versed and those who are initiated in the knowledge of fine arts, visual arts, then you would know what the painters were thinking, or you can have an educated guess of what the painters meant, or what the painters felt when they created their work. Now, nowadays, certain common objects can be seen anywhere. Radios. I'm not sure if people still have transistor radios now. I think they're becoming far less. They're becoming far less common. They've been replaced by our plastic blocks of that we call smartphones. But the radio used to be seen all over the world, and it used to be universally recognized. The bicycle, it's become an object of universal human culture. It's everywhere. Other articles are universally used but have distinct differences from country to country. Um, some have argued that brooms in Britain and the United States are made of different materials and they have different shapes, even though the availability of materials and the job that they have to do are basically the same. Um, you know what brooms are for. Their brooms are to brush away dust and dirt. Um, Although the broom may be universally known, such differences in materials and use emerge from and contribute to a national identity. Some unique cultural or symbolic objects can be identified with a particular region. The like the ones that you like the two buses that you see, the London bus. The London red buses have been so iconic that it is something that you would expect to find if you go visit London. A long, long time ago, the British Leyland Company made the buses look like this. Nowadays, they look more streamlined, more modern, and more comfortable. I remember when these old double deckers used to roam around the streets in Surabaya, and they used to catch fire a lot. So that was fun to watch. Um, other notable objects would be the totem pole from North America. There, if you visit North America, Canada, you would expect to see a totem pole or two. So objects can give you this sense of place. Now, until very recently, most human life was dominated by the larger environmental context. Natural environments were used and understood by hunters, sailors, fisher folk with little significant modification. Um, you can imagine, you can imagine in the olden days, um, sailors would use very rudimentary instruments Some traditional sailors uh, don't even use any instruments. Um, they just look up at the sky and they navigate using the stars, for example. So we were they were very dependent upon the larger environmental context. Now these people needed what such environments could offer and used what they could obtain from them to create their artifacts, their shelters, huts, tents, their implements, and their boats. Aboriginal people sometimes affected considerable change in their surrounding, but their impacts were specific as to organisms and locales. Nature remained dominant, and I think only in the past 4 to 5 thousand years, with the coming of agriculture, towns, cities, has nature's domination seemed to have somewhat diminished. Only in the past 200 years has this relationship altered to such a degree that human experience um, now seems primarily of humanly made places and things, the built environment. How much power or dominion humans have over nature is debatable. We are consistently reminded of nature's power and devastating impact on the built environment through cataclysmic events such as hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, and tornadoes, and more recently, subtly, by changes to natural systems uh, that occur as the result of humanly made products, such as automobiles, air conditioners, fertilizers, and soap. Only recently have we been made aware that we are slowly, or that each of us are contributing to a certain degree by the use of our automobiles, by using air conditioning, fertilizers, and whatnot. We are contributing to the degradation of our natural environment. Now, we are part of a greater environmental context. We are part of a greater society. We are part of a greater universe, and therefore we are somewhat a part of a system. And if we look at the built environment that we create and the products that help us create the built environment, our homes, for example, our homes today still contain objects like, obviously, tables, chairs. But in addition to those objects, we have television. Some of you may still even have landlines or cable telephones, lights, washers, sinks, and flushing toilets. Now, many of these other products must be connected beyond the limits of the house to a complex of roads, sewers, electric lines, and other external systems commonly known to everyone as infrastructure. Now, the home, as we know it, has become divorced from its natural surroundings and turned into a small part of a much larger network of support systems, all of which can fail on short notice or even without any notice at all. Sorry. Now, in its simplest form, our home is a shelter, and the shelter itself can exist without artificial connections to an external support system. Um, the simple shelter was originally for people's protection, but it has changed and become a place to display our many possessions and to display ourselves. Products are also connected to natural resources and to the natural systems of the earth. Often in highly industrialized societies, especially like in the United States or Europe, a single design is manufactured into many thousands, sometimes millions, or even billions of individual products. An explosion that can cause significant loss of resources and corresponding environmental impacts. For example, the soda can or the plastic beverage bottle, drink bottle that I mentioned, it can appear quite simple and insignificant, but it is a relatively small product. But since it's reproduced millions and millions of times, it consumes huge amounts of resources. Now, the initially the design of ordinary products, the design of ordinary products affects everyone. Objects that we use every day can give us pleasure or cause serious problems with human, environmental, and technical systems. Um, a simple tea kettle, for example, that doesn't pour, or a door handle with a unpleasantly rough surface that hurts your hand are in very direct contrast, are in contrast to a kettle that pours beautifully, or a door handle that is super smooth, super pleasant, that just caresses your hands every time you hold it. And the following sections, in the following sections, I'll highlight I'll highlight ordinary everyday objects and the design processes and the design professions that make their realization possible. The transition from the traditional craftsperson to the contemporary industrial designer is we'll explore that in the historical context over the next few slides as well. A long time ago, but not necessarily in a galaxy far away. In the Middle Ages, most people had very few possessions. In the Middle Ages, even in the time the king and queen of medieval Europe, or any landlord or the lord, was provided with an elevated platform and throne and or chair. A throne is basically an elaborate chair to sit in, and they sit there. They serve. They sit there. They survey the fine silver or gold plates on the table, and then they may have stained glass in the windows and tapestries on the walls and very fancy or costly table linens. Sometimes these objects were so important that when royalty moved from one house to another, everything was taken by the horse and wagon to furnish the next house. Even the glass in the windows were moved, and everything was designed from the glass to the chair to withstand these very tough journeys of moving from one house to another. Now, the throne or the chair is a term that English speakers have inherited as a Western or as an English title to designate success. As a leader in a position of authority, a chairman, that comes from the chair or the throne that a king or queen sits. So it is not only the Lord who has the chair, it can now be the chair of the board. Chair of the board is a phrase that comes to English speakers directly from the elevated status of that important chair at a medieval table. The table at which royalty was seated was known as a board. And that is exactly what it was, a board on trestles. Such historic roots are still symbols of contemporary society. We still refer to the chair as one who sits above the board of directors. The chairman, the boss, the big guy, or the big person. Sorry, I didn't mean the binary reference there. Now, throughout the world and throughout most of history, crafts people, artisans working at skilled trades, pottery, cabinet making, weaving, even metalwork. They learned their skills from their parents, who in turn had been taught by their own parents. So this is a skill that is taught and passed down from one generation to another. Or maybe if it wasn't passed down from grandparents to parents to child, um, maybe people acquired their craftsmanship, their um, their skill of trade by becoming an apprentice. They are apprenticed to a skilled artisan or an experienced artisan, and they've become an apprentice of theirs since a very young age. They may even pay the artisan for the privilege of learning, and then they would later, as their skills grow, they receive modest pay, and finally they themselves become master artisans, and perhaps even having apprentices of their own. Now, this sort of system of handing down knowledge, passing down traditions and knowledge, ensured proper training and understanding of the work, from selecting raw materials to manufacturing, finishing, and selling whatever it is that was produced. Originality was not such a big deal. It's really important to such workers. Their role was to make what was needed according to traditional standards, and perhaps to refine or modify standard designs to suit particular needs. And occasionally, outstanding artisans produced new designs that were greatly admired, and thus they initiated a new traditions or new styles. But that was craftsmanship or product design in a traditional sense. During the Industrial Revolution, or as the Industrial Revolution came of age-old traditions of handwork by skilled artisans were challenged, and in some cases brought to an end thanks to the Industrial Revolution. Now, the Industrial Revolution sort of began, I think, by the improved design of the steam engine by James Watt in the 1700s, 1769 or 1770. That steam engine was a catalyst in the development of factory production, and newly discovered knowledge, such as the use of certain compounds or the use of certain ores in iron production, made possible the casting of large sections of iron required for the machines of industrial production. I think by the 19th century, many articles previously made by craftspeople at home were made in factories, were mass produced in factories. Now, with the coming of the machine, standards in both visual and functional design rapidly changed. In the Victorian age, machines could instantly stamp out elaborate effects that would have created a craftsperson days or weeks to create. A craftsperson would need several days to make or to carve a pattern, but machines can just stamp that out in a couple of minutes or hours. So, in the spirit of the arts and crafts movement, the artist or the craftsperson today, um, the arts and crafts movement stressed the satisfaction that individuals can derive from working creatively with their hands. Many artistic people choose to work in one of the crafts. Now, artists or craftspeople today have mostly been educated at a university or art school, but they work like the medieval artisans, from selecting the raw materials to finishing and even selling the product. Artists, artisans, craftspeople still use basic tools, um, although their tools have developed in such ways so that they're a lot easier to wield nowadays. Um, However, uh, artists or craftspeople design things through direct contact with the consumer. Their working methods, however, may not be the same as those in the days of medieval craft apprenticeships, and they've emerged from the anonymity of the artisan to become artists known by name, of whom patrons expect some sort of originality. Exhibitions in contemporary galleries show an abundance of examples of the high standards and refinements that a contemporary artist or craft person can attain, from original conception to final completion of the object. And while we're at the topic of artisans or artists or craft person, if you're looking for originality and if you like quirky things, I suggest you check out the works of Yayoi Kusama. Um, the industrial designer of today, industrial designers today stand as a bridge between the old world and of the craft person and the incredibly sophisticated world of mass production. The best of them integrate the highest aspect of human, environmental, and technological systems. Industrial designers have seldom been trained in a particular trade or to work with a specific material. They're often educated professionals, such as engineers, who, through special studies, become qualified to supervise and coordinate the complex or the complicated process on which industrial production is based. If you look at this illustration, you would think people who work in factories, the machine operators, they're not exactly like the craft person or the artists or the artisans of old. Machine operators are like as they are called. They operate machinery, and that's it. However, the people who supervise and coordinate them, the operators, to navigate through the complicated process of industrial production. They're the ones, I would say, as the modern day craftsperson or the industrial age artisan. And these guys, the industrial engineers, they're the ones who coordinate many different specialists. They coordinate technicians, artisans, manufacturers, and even salespeople. I think, contrary to the craftsperson of old, or even the craftsperson of today, so a craftsperson or an artist tend to work separately. They tend to work by themselves. But an industrial engineer who work in mass production and complex and are involved in the complicated process of manufacture. For the industrial designers of today, collaboration is key to the success in the design process today. I'd like to bring to your attention challenges that we face today. Now, the potential benefits to society of advanced technology and improved materials are obvious. For example, the development of modern day bathrooms, kitchens, and laundry rooms with their numerous appliances has given us improved health, comfort, and convenience. We don't have to dig a hole every time we need to go to the bathroom. We don't have to dig a hole every time we need to do our business, whether it's number one or number two. We have bathrooms to take care of that. Now, we might expect that the entire built environment and all the objects that constitute it would show a similar improvement. Unfortunately, this hope has not been fulfilled. We have the means, but it seems that collectively we lack the wisdom and resolution. People today seem to expect that the quality of life should be completely satisfactory with adequate food, comfortable clothing, adequate housing, work, leisure, and comfortable means of transportation. Satisfaction of all of these is taken for granted by the majority of people in both in developed and developing countries. Paradoxically, we have not succeeded collectively in designing a coherent and meaningful environment, complete with all its constituent parts. The human ability to identify and solve material problems seem inexhaustible. But the ability to anticipate the impact of unlimited production remains comparatively weak. We're only just beginning to realize the collective result of the accelerating multitude of individual decisions and consumer habits. It is hard for us to absorb the fact that each of us individually contributes actively to massive, large-scale problems caused by our desire for more and more products. The common way of thinking about objects is to view them as a separate, isolated units, unconnected with anything else. My phone, your phone, our phones have nothing to do with anything else. But it is a mass-produced item. Our phones are mass-produced items, and inside it are tens, if not tens of thousands of components that are also mass-produced items. And to produce these components, to make a single phone, requires huge amounts of resources. But most of the times we neglect those things. Our phones nowadays are cheap, anyways. We just go out. Our phone's broken, chuck them out, go out and buy a new one, without even thinking of the impact it may have to the society, to the environment, and so on. Now, the process of making an object with its needs for materials, tools, and power too often seems remote from the finished product and our immediate convenience. It's convenient, it's cheap, it's accessible, so what? But behind all of that convenience, there are tools, materials, and power to produce the item. Now, the automobile car is a product that was invented and designed in the light of a certain ideal vision, a vision of easy, hopefully efficient, and independent mobility, and perhaps even a vision of an attractive, seductive, or powerful object that each of us can own. However, I think only in recent years, in the last century or so, have the full consequences of the use of automobiles begun to catch up and perhaps even overtake its advantages. I think it is. I think in its 100 years or 200 years of automotive history, I think it has caused a lot more disadvantages than advantages. The automobile creates a need for costly and irreplaceable construction materials. What do you think they're made of? And also a seemingly insatiable demand for increasingly scarce operating fuel, fossil fuels. These things run on fossil fuel. This one doesn't run on fossil fuel. It runs on batteries. It's an electric vehicle. But where do you think the electricity comes from, if not burning fossil fuels? So indirectly, it still consumes fossil fuels. Other than that, cars also require extensive landscaping for roads and even uglier parking lots. It creates extreme problems of safe operation, a distressing output of waste, and complicated multi-ton carcass after it becomes inoperative. What do you do with a hunk of metal, with a 2-ton tin can with 4 wheels, after you can't use it, after it becomes useless, what do you do with it? It's a 2-ton carcass that you need to get rid of. You crush them, and then what? You pile them up or something. So the automobile, the idea of convenience now burdens us with all of that, all of the above. Automobiles need, and they create a diffuse landscape of sprawling environments, sprawling developments that foster more and more auto-dependent lifestyles. Um, most people, I reckon, choose to drive less than a kilometer away for groceries. Um, and more auto-dependent lifestyles means more traffic, more congestion, more air pollution, and air pollution related health problems or public health problems such as accidents, traffic accidents, um, and ultimately even global warming. Tragically, as this product multiplies, it takes huge amounts from individuals. It takes huge amounts from families. It takes huge amounts from city budgets too. Now, how many deaths per year do you think automobiles cause nowadays? I think within any given country, say the ever auto-dependent country like the United States, I think the numbers are in one of its busiest cities would be 5,000 to 7,000 deaths or car-related deaths per year. I'm not sure about here though, but I'm sure the numbers are just as great, if not underreported. So a product that at the beginning of its conception was built on the idea of efficient and comfortable mobility now suddenly burdens us with something a lot more. I think something a lot scarier, especially when you think of global warming and the traffic deaths. So that brings me to some questions that we should ask ourselves when we create something. These questions are dubbed as a designer's responsibility. Now, designers, planners, obviously must have a sense of responsibility for human, social, environmental, and technical sets of issues, from the manufacturer who commissions a design to global users and consumers. As professionals, they also have a responsibility to society now and in the future, of course. Everyone involved today in creating the complex built environment and its individual components must be willing to confront many issues and concerns that are all too easy to neglect. A comprehensive, sustainable approach to product design must consider not only the effective design of the product, but also the context in which it is to be placed. More specifically, the designer today needs to consider such human, environmental, and technical issues such as the answers to these questions posed. First of all, environmental impacts. If you were to create something, if you were to create an object, ask yourself this first: what are the environmental impacts of the object? Now, I mentioned that everything is connected to everything else, and that statement is a widely quoted statement about the world in which we live in today. Many designers are beginning to grasp the essence of this statement and are considering the total implications and full production cycle of what they create. Where the raw materials come from, the efficiency of their production, the energy and resources used, and the pollution expended. The longevity of the product or longevity of product usefulness, if it can be reused or recycled, and so on. Now, this complete cycle analysis is not a cradle to grave or a beginning to end of life design, but it is commonly referred to as cradle to cradle design. So the birth of a product, the life of a product, and beginning a new life through the reuse and the recycling of the product. Um, However, if you're, for example, if you're trying to keep a hamburger or any other type of warm food, if you're trying to keep them warm in a styrofoam container or recharging or using the air conditioner in an automobile can erode the ozone layer, we still have massive problems to solve as well. Now, when choosing exotic woods to enhance a design can contribute to the destruction of tropical forests and ultimately to deterioration in the quality of the atmosphere, neither the design nor the resulting objects seem so personal or so isolated from the immensity of the earth. The second question, how does it affect resources? How does your product or the product that you design, how does your product to be affect the availability and the sustainability of scarce materials? If designing a more powerful, fuel inefficient car means a faster drawdown of petroleum supplies, leaving less for future generations, or if invasion of wilderness areas by loggers and mechanized tourists means less appreciation of nature by future generations or degradation of ecosystem health, then the decision to design, to manufacture, or to buy that car transcends the personal, the pocketbook, or even the gross national product. We must consider renewable resources with cradle to cradle design. Another question that we need to pose, does it produce waste? Designers and consumers, if you're not a designer, if you're not a producer, if you're a consumer, you still need to be concerned not only with the products that you consume, but also with the byproducts. Is an object designed so that all of it's consumed or used up? Is it designed to be recycled or deliberately designed to be disposable? Is packaging necessary? Is the packaging excessive? And if needed, is the packaging biodegradable? Or will it be found in landfills or littering the sides of the roads or even harming wildlife decades after the time of purchase and use? So we do have to consider the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and the cradle to cradle design approach. Um, when you first bought your phones, um, it comes in a box, right? It comes in a box, and within that box there are multiple multiple cardboard shapes that help hold the phone up and to store the, I don't know, the product warranty or the charger cables and whatnot and the accessories. But does the box actually need to be that big? I mean, if it just comes, if I'm happy with it if it just comes as a phone and phone, very minimal accessories, and then the warranty card. That's it. Rather than having this elaborate packaging, cardboard over cardboard, and then wrapped in plastic. It produces a lot of waste. It's too much waste. Another thing to consider, is it safe? So, do designers think about whether they would want their own children to wear the flammable dress they just created, or is caring lessened by the faceless, nameless people who will eventually buy the product? Is protection or profit the bottom line? Yeah, is it safe? If you make an article of clothing, for example, if you are a fashion designer, and you want to go after that certain look, you want it to that certain way. And the only way to do it is by choosing materials that may be harmful to the safety of the people that wear it. Um, there are some fabrics that are flammable, that catch fire very easily, and other fabrics that don't. So, are you willing to put someone's life at risk for that to pursue that certain look, to pursue that certain image? So, is it safe? Um, will the batteries in my phone explode? I think that happened. That happened to one of the largest phone manufacturers in the world a few years back. Um, I think they chose the wrong specification batteries, or they they have a they had a design malfunction um, in their battery pack, or the power packs, or whatever it is. Their phones kept exploding. So is it safe? And lastly, what is its impact on human health? Now, ever have you ever wondered who designed a cigarette? Who designed the seductive packaging? Who designed the very colorful and attractive advertising that we see today? On a cigarette, on a pack of cigarettes, there is now a huge writing, a block of writing in black: smoking harms your health, smoking kills you, and whatnot. And then there's a health line, 1-800-quit, or whatever it is. And then a photo, an image of a certain disease associated with tobacco use, or tobacco misuse for that matter. It's a very stark contrast to the advertising campaign that they run. If you drive around the city or walk around the city, and you see and you have a look at the billboards, what are tobacco products or cigarettes associated with? They are usually not associated with lung disease. They're not associated with premature death. They're not associated with all other illnesses. They are associated with youth, with success, with um, everything else that is positive. Um, that using the product is cool, using the product is trendy, is awesome, or whatever it is. I think from the very first time cigarettes were conceived until today, they have done absolutely nothing than damage the public health, and create huge amounts of litter. So, ever wondered who designs these advertising campaigns? Considering what we know now about tobacco's impact on human health, what do you think are the ethical considerations of the designers of such things? If you were asked to design a colorful, a cheerful, and a very attractive packaging for a tobacco product, what are your ethical considerations? Would you just take the money and say, yeah, sure, I'll design it. It's good money. Or will you actually consider the impact of that packaging? It's so attractive that even non-smokers want to buy it. Um, what are your ethical considerations of such things? How far do your responsibilities extend? Now, do we consider the total impact of each product design? Um, pollution not only occurs during manufacturing, but pollution also occurs and is caused by all the transportation needed to bring the product to life, and during the use of many products. Um, the I mentioned about mobile phones and their packaging. So the production of these plastic abominations that our lives are so dependent on nowadays is not only causing pollution during its manufacture, not only does it create waste in the form of excessive packaging, but it also pollutes in the transportation process from the manufacturer to the distribution hubs and from the distribution hubs to your homes. So currently, there is considerable concern over the many chemicals that are used in products. Many of them do compromise human health and are known to off gas or release their chemicals into the air after they're manufactured and while being used. Artificial fragrances like perfumes, deodorants, shampoos, and so on, they are known to cause health problems in some people with multiple chemical sensitivity. Now, the off-gassing of chemicals accumulate in the interior environment, and that can cause indoor air quality or IAQ problems in homes, commercial spaces, and office interiors. Now, products are a most important building block of the built environment, of course. Many exist in great numbers, multiplying far faster than the world's population. Um, how many mobile phones to human beings on the planet do you think there is? What's the ratio? Maybe one person, one phone? I don't think so. Maybe one to four or one to three. So, yeah, that's just an illustration. Some of the products that we use, that we produce and that we use have enduring usefulness and they have enduring beauty. Others may be initially attractive but are wasteful and destructive. How many times have we bought something and then immediately regretted it? Why the hell did we buy this anyway? Society and industrial design now in the future must creatively respond uh, to the many advances in human or social or environmental and technological factors as we all work towards a more sustainable society. So once again, um, I hope what I've delivered today can give you an illustration of how little and seemingly insignificant products that we use in our daily lives um, is actually not a small, insignificant, and simple product, but it is actually something that comes from the environment, that it takes a lot of effort to produce. It takes a lot of resources to produce, and more than likely, it has up to a certain extent polluted the environment um, that we live in today. In other words, I hope I have illustrated how our products, the products that we use, are connected to the greater context of things. So, before we end, does anybody have any comments or any questions with or about what we have just or what I have just talked about today? You're more than welcome to directly or immediately unmute yourself and deliver your thoughts or your questions. Yes, Nadine.
I have a question. It's like morely a curiosity. Um, we built a city as a planner, but is it possible for us to didn't produce any waste, or if we have to produce any waste, we can still produce it into another things that will useful for the general public? Like, is that possible to do that?
Thank you for your curiosity. Um, if you look back, or if you think back to primary school or high school biology, um, what what are the um, what are the traits or features or characteristics of living beings? I think one of the traits or one of the characters is that they produce waste. Of course, it's biological waste that can be put back into the system, into the biological system, and thus it can be it can be reused. But fact of the matter is, we all produce waste, um, and the the only way I think the only way for us to separate ourselves from the issue of waste is is to change our way of thinking. So instead of, for example, I'm still using the phone. I'm still using the phone as an analogy because I am amazed at how much at how much excessive waste a phone purchase can be. The packaging, that is. So if we can if we can if we can create a if we can create a product that is of use to us, a phone, for example, and that with minimum packaging, that's one way to reduce the impact. We don't need. I don't. For me personally, I don't need. I don't need a box. The box that came that my phone came in was about that thick. Why would it need to be that thick? I mean, that if you put the charger in and the cable and other accessories, it doesn't even have a user's manual. The packaging could have been that slim, that sort of thing. So if we were to change our way of thinking and perhaps phone packaging again, if you can somehow give a clue to your customers that, you know, if you buy a phone from us, you don't need to throw away the packaging. You can you can just follow the instructions and it will turn into a phone holder or something like that. That's one way of maybe not reducing waste, but prolonging the use of a product. And if you prolong the use of a product, therefore you delay the time, or you delay the time it will end up in our rubbish. You give the system, you give our we would be able to give our recycling system time to process the waste that we already have before adding our own waste to it, so to say. So, but in in short, no, we cannot produce zero waste. We can't produce zero footprint. We can't leave zero footprint. Um, but we can with our ingenuity think of a way to sort of reduce and perhaps even prolong the use duration or the use quality of the products that we use, and thus I think it would have a major impact on the way we think or we rethink our cities, and yeah, and the way we plan them. So thank you very much for your curiosity. I hope that I've answered your or fed your curiosity in some ways.
Yeah, it really helped me. Thank you a lot, sir.
No worries. All right. Anyone else? Okay then. Oh yes. Anna.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm actually very curious about. Um, there are times when this designer thing is not in a um, in a in a product size, but like in big buildings, for examples. So as you have, as we see in the presentation that you have currently showing, like the designer responsibility, I really want to ask regarding like, does it produce waste? Does it really connects with, do you know the, I think it was in I don't know where it is. It's in Egypt. Wait, no, I think it's in Arab, where they produce the islands in the waters. Wait, yeah, they make human-made islands. Does that conclude as waste since it's still very empty? And oh yeah, Dubai. I'm so sorry, it's in Dubai. And one thing I've seen in the internet, there were this Turkey Disney castles. It's completely empty right now, and it's half finished, and it's very big, it's very large, and it's not inhabited. So does that conclude as waste? And do you have any opinion regarding this? Unfinished buildings and unresponsible humans creating something that is to be said to help the humanity have a nice living area, but unfortunately it doesn't. What is your opinion, sir?
Thank you very much for that. That's I was about to highlight that when we in the next few weeks, but I think I can touch on that now, or on a little bit of that now. Fact of the matter is that sometimes we create something or we buy something simply because we can. I know it sounds really shallow and petty, but it's just the way it is. I admit to creating something, maybe usually a drawing, a doodle, or whatever it is, on the corner of my textbook, when I was in high school or in university, simply because I can. I admit that I'm guilty of buying things simply because I can, and then I immediately get buyer's regret. Why the hell did I buy this thing? It's just sitting there now. In the case of empty cities or empty major developments, sometimes those things. Let's have a look at Dubai, for example, with their reclaimed islands. Sometimes the idea of such an immense undertaking or such immense development is for the betterment of humanity. Sometimes. Another example of that is Shanghai. I think more than a decade ago, the Shanghai municipal government decided the city center is too crowded, it's too stressful, the pressures on the infrastructure is too immense. We need to do something. So in order to attract people away from the city center, they created nine new towns or new city centers. Funnily enough, these 9 new towns are complete cities. So it's a completely they are completely functional cities with homes, schools, workplaces, healthcare facilities, you name it, complete. But they're all bare. Nobody wants to live in them. Why? Some of it had to do with the way the cities or the towns were designed. So one city has the 9 cities are thematic cities. They have themes. One looks like a German town, one looks like a British town, one looks like a Dutch city, and the others look like cities from other parts of the world. And one of the contributing factors to people not wanting to live there is because of that. The architecture seems strange. The layout of the city seems strange to most locals. I think one city is thriving. One city is thriving not because people want to live there, but people want to take pre-wedding photos there. The British town. So they say, oh yeah, we went to Great Britain for our honeymoon. They didn't. They went to one of those cities. They took pictures there, and then they went back. They went back, and it's such a huge tourist industry there now. So the idea was to relieve the pressures of the inner city by distributing the population to outer cities, to new cities, and creating new settlements. But it just never really materialized that way. So um, instead it benefited in a way that nobody else have ever anticipated before. It benefited from the tourism industry because people wanted to go abroad but not want to leave their homes. You can take a day trip to Germany. You can take a day trip to the Netherlands and so on. With the case of say Disney castles and theme parks, large-scale theme parks that are now largely empty because of the pandemic. If you look at it at a glance, then it does seem so wasteful, but but if you discount the pandemic, if you look at it throughout its lifetime, how many visitors do go there? Have a look at Universal Studios in Singapore. How many visitors per year come to Universal Studios Singapore? How many visitors per year come to Disneyland? How many visitors per year come to Warner Brothers Movie World, for example, before the pandemic hit? I think so. Those places serve their purpose, and as long as they continue to do so, I think that is not a wasteful thing, because we need to be entertained in some ways, and some people enjoy such forms of entertainment while others don't. I prefer to just go and ride out in the forest or somewhere, but some people like theme parks. As for residential developments, especially the large-scale residential developments, again, the initial idea was for the betterment of society, to provide better homes, more affordable maybe, but nobody wants to live there anyways because it's too far away from the city, or it's just inconvenient, or they said it would be affordable housing, but I can't afford it anyway. It could be one of those many reasons. So we may need to look deeper into that. Why is it empty? So that's something that I should bring up the next time. So next week we will discuss interiors, and then after that it's landscape, and then landscape it's cities and regions. So when we discuss landscape, cities and regions, we should think we should be diving deeper into that. So thank you for the idea.
Thank you too, sir, for the answer.
No worries. Anyone else? We still have about 20 odd minutes. Right then. Well, if no one else would like to pose any comments or questions, there are a couple of references that you might want to have a look at. I think I have these in the classroom already. If not, then someone please let me know. I should upload them. I almost forgot to upload the recording of our session last week. So yeah, thank you for the reminder. I've uploaded it to our classroom, and I will do so. I will do the same with our current session. And once again, for those of you who haven't marked your attendance, here's the QR code for you to scan, or you can punch in 391849 to mark your attendance. Otherwise, I will double check your attendance in the classroom logs as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attention. Thank you very much for attending this morning session. I know for some of us it's a challenge to wake up early in the morning, but it's great to see you all. I hope you all have a great day today, and I will see you all, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. So thank you very much. Bye.